Yeah, I put my phone in the freezer and I don't think that was a good idea because now it's just sweating. But I hope it's okay. I think we'll be okay. Welcome to Discovering Delight, a podcast by Sie Dlamini. Hello everybody, welcome back to episode 31 of Discovering Delight. I am your host, Sie. I am still Sie, nothing's changed, still me. And you know, this year we are doing both audio and video. My video setup is very experimental right now, but I am hoping that it works for now. I hope everyone is having an awesome start to the new year. And is it still appropriate to say compliments? I haven't used this camera in a very long time. I think I only used it once after I bought it and it's just been chilling. But today we're bringing it out for a whole new spin in the new year. I really want this podcast to be both video and audio, and for the video listeners or watchers that don't know anything about this podcast, so if you've been existing on the YouTube space, I know I haven't posted in a very long time. I haven't posted in over a year on here, but I am hoping that this year I'll be more consistent just with the podcast as well as vlogs from time to time. Yeah, so video watchers, this is not the first episode of this podcast. If you don't know anything about the podcast, please go check it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We have 30 episodes there. I think I ended 2024 on episode 30. So this is episode 31, and I think it's just a perfect number to utilize both audio and video this time around and see where it takes us. So I started this podcast I think in January last year, around, I think it's the 1 year anniversary actually. I think around the 20 something of January. I have to double check that. And my first ever episode was a book review. I think I reviewed the book, wasn't Love in Color, but it was a Bolu Babel, I'm butchering her name. Hold on, I have to check what book this is. It was Honey and Spice. This is the book that I reviewed. It was my first read for 2024, and Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. Yes, this is the first book I spoke about on this podcast, and since it's the start of a fresh year, I thought I'd share a little bit about some of the books that I've read this month, January 2025. I am currently on book number 4, and yeah, some of the books I've read this month have just been amazing. One of them in particular really is the best companion that I could have ever asked for, the best book I could have read to start this year. So I'm going to start with this book, which is called Lessons in Chemistry. This was such a fun read, and I've also just noticed the trend with myself that like I start the year with like some cute quirky romance. Like I want it to be cute, I want it to be light, don't want to think too much, right? And so I always pick a romance book just to start the year off, and then I get into the more heavy stuff, the more thoughtful and thought-provoking kind of stuff. So I started with Lessons in Color, and I just want to say, because after I read this book, I thought it was a lovely book, right? I thought for the purpose of it, it was light, it was quirky, it had some thought-provoking moments because it is a historical fiction novel. So it is set at a time when there weren't a lot of women in science, and it follows the story of a lady, Elizabeth Zott, who was pursuing her master's in chemistry, and then she got assaulted by the man who was supposed to be her advisor, and who was going to be her supervisor as well for her PhD. So she gets assaulted, and then she, instead of, I guess, the head of the program, instead of kind of shielding her and protecting her during that time, they want her to release a statement basically saying that whatever happened, like it was a misunderstanding, and for her to apologize to the advisor, the man that had assaulted her. So she says she's not going to do that. Instead, she drops out of the program, right? But then she finds a job at a chemistry lab, and she's basically hired as a lab tech, because she didn't finish. A chemist has to have PhDs, and she never got that PhD, but she's very smart, she's very brilliant, and she can compete at that level of chemists. Then she meets this arrogant, very confident, borderline arrogant man who's also a chemist at the place that she works at, and they have a little bit of a tiff at the beginning, but then it sparks into a relationship. And Elizabeth doesn't want to have children, she doesn't want to get married, and unfortunately, while this romance is budding, he passes away. They had started cohabitating, and they were living together, and they were building a beautiful life together, and then he passes away, and now she has to figure out how to live without him. And on top of that, she finds out she's pregnant with their child, and it's just like, wow, you know. So it's just, not to spoil it too much, but it was just like a fantastic read, and I enjoyed it. And the one thing that I will say is that don't read reviews on books. Like, so what I like to do is, after I finish a book and I think it's brilliant, I immediately go onto the internet, right, and I will see what other people think about the book. And I was shockingly surprised, that's redundant, but I was stunned by the level of dislike for this book. A lot of people thought like the chemistry jargon was a bit too pretentious. Elizabeth as a character was just very off-putting, and I was stunned by that, because I love the character. She was very stern in her ways, and she didn't compromise on herself for other people's, you know, like love or support. She just stood for what she stood for. And I guess technically in life, people don't love that type of person. Like, if you're the type of person who stands up for what you believe in, who is fixed on your ways, and who is confident and knows what they want, who will not compromise, typically a lot of people will hate you if you embody that kind of character. So really enjoyed this book. And moving on to the second read of the year, this was The First Woman by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. I hope I'm not butchering people's words. People's names. I probably am. But yeah, this is the cover of the book. It is stunning. It is just so beautiful. And for my audio listeners, I am so sorry that you don't get to see the cover, but that means you can go watch me on YouTube so that you too can see what the rest of us are seeing. But yeah, loved it loads. There were so many brilliant moments in this book. I enjoyed the storyline, and it follows a young girl called Kirabo, who enters her teens, and like she has a lot of questions about who her mother is, right? So she grew up in the village with her grandparents. Her dad works in the city. Mom and dad had her at a very young age, so her grandparents took her, and then her parents went to pursue their education and their careers. So she grows up in the village, she goes to school. It's also a historical fiction. There's a lot of things about what was happening in Uganda during this time period, and a whole lot of like just talks about decolonization and war, and just, yeah, urbanization and things like that. So a whole lot of that is in this novel, which was just a brilliant way to infuse like the cultural significance and everything else that was happening, the historical context, right? And so there was also some mythical elements at the beginning. Kirabo realizes that she has some kind of like a superpower where there's like two of her, and one is very rebellious and like it leaves in the nighttime. I don't like the fact that that part of the story was not explored to its fullest. I felt like it could have been explored much broader than it did, because it was a very gripping storyline at the beginning of the novel, but it was dropped like, I think, a quarter of the novel in, and I would have loved for that to continuously be a part of her storyline all the way through to the point where she is in college. But Kirabo then goes to live with her father for the first time, who's now married and has 2 kids, and his stepmom is weird towards her, doesn't want her living with them, right? So then her aunts have to take her in, and she goes to boarding school, which is like a Catholic school, and there's a boy involved that she falls in love with, and she's still on this quest trying to find her mom, because her paternal family is not giving her the answers that she wants, right? So she continues on this quest, and also eventually she drops it at some point. But I'm not going to spoil it, because there's a very big plot twist about who her mother is, and where she's been hiding, and that, which just made this book very gripping. So yeah, I think it was a beautiful novel on family, on friendship, on young love, and on culture and history, and just the different socio-political dynamics and conversations that were happening in Uganda at that time. I've been yapping, guys, literally yapping. Okay, the third and final book I'm going to speak about is one of the best books I feel I have ever read in my life. It is a memoir by Akwaeke Emezi, and in this book they talk about their life, right? They take us through their life's journey, and I am somebody who's very fond of Akwaeke Emezi's work, and I've read Freshwater. I think that's one of the books that a lot of us have read. If we know Akwaeke Emezi, we know them through that book. And it was just really perfect to read this memoir and kind of get a glimpse into their life, and hear a lot about the things that they've been battling with, the things that like keep them grounded, the questions that they have about life, their outlook on life, right? And it's just, it was such a beautiful, beautiful memoir, and it was very inspiring. I love that they stand in their truth, they are confident, they know who they are, and they walk their path as the person that they are, right? And they've gone through this entire process of self-discovery, of just self-exploration, and it's just such a gripping read that to me felt like looking into the mirror and just seeing my powerful, brave, daring self staring back at me. It reminded me what it is like to stand in your truth, in your power, and all the other things that come with that, right? Because it can be quite a challenging thing to do, right? And it also just like reminded me about the power of community, of chosen family, and how they can heal parts of you. They can show you life and grace and understanding in ways that people or even your family may not be able to show up and show that to you, right? And yeah, I just think every person needs to read this book. It was awfully inspiring. It was awfully motivating. It reminded me to just like go after the things that are in my heart and not back down. Never what? Never back down. But yeah, it was such a beautiful companion, and they speak about their relationships, they speak about their work, they speak about their home that they have created, the sanctuary that they've created for themselves. And I think that it is definitely one of those books that everyone needs to read, but also it just instilled a very deep sense of self-belief for me while I was reading. I had to read it very slowly, take my time with it, and also just savor it. And some moments I just felt like, ooh, and I put it down because I just felt like deeply connected to the words that were being said. And I also just think that I love the structure of a memoir because they were letters that were like dedicated to different people in their life, I believe, or yeah, just different people, beings, human beings, spiritual beings, and that kind of allowed for it to feel like they were speaking directly to me, right? Or like that letter could be words that I would dedicate to a friend that would identify a person in my life that, you know, that letter sparked a memory of. And so I just thought it was such a fantastic and beautiful read. And I have yapped for about 18 minutes now, so I'm gonna stop it there. But I just wanted to say a very, very warm and beautiful welcome to this podcast. My name is Sie. I will never get tired of saying that. My name is Sia, and yeah, thank you for being here and for listening to me yap. I hope you found some of these books, like just add them to your reading list, you know? Like whether or not you found them appealing, I almost said appetizing, but appealing, you know? But I just genuinely just think you must add them to your reading list, and then you can come back and tell me what you thought of them. I've had some conversations on my socials about these books as I was reading them, and I'm happy to know that other people felt the way that I felt, and felt connected to some of these works the way that I felt connected to them as well. I know actually Lessons in Chemistry has a short series that was produced, I think it was Apple Movies, and it's very different from the book. I tried to watch it, and a lot of like things that were happening in the book just didn't happen on the show, and I felt like it was weird. But the main premise of the book was there, and I guess that's what happens with adaptations. But I found it underwhelming. I know when I posted about reading that book, a lot of people asked if the show was based on the book, and I hadn't seen the show yet. But now that I have seen the show, I think it was vaguely based on the book, but I'd say read the book. That was more intriguing, and it was more capturing, if I could put it that way. But anyways, guys, thank you. I will see you in my next video. I don't know what we're going to yap about, but I have some very exciting things planned for the podcast this year. Things I'll be trying, people I'll be bringing along with me on this journey. And if you just watched this one episode, please go back to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and listen to all the other 30 episodes to just get a glimpse of what this podcast is about. I don't speak about books all the time, but reading is a huge part of my life, that it actually does consume a lot of my time, and I read a lot, so it's worth sharing that part of my life. I just come on here to yap about the things that bring me joy, and reading is one of those things. And yeah, so if you want to know what other things have brought me joy, or what other things brought me joy last year, you can go check out all the other audio episodes. I will not be posting them on YouTube. That's a lot of work that I do not want to do. And also, just because there's no video to follow along with, I just think it's very redundant. So just go stream them there. And I love you guys so much. Goodbye. We have come to the end of yet another delightful episode. Please leave us a 5-star rating, and don't forget to share this episode with any of your friends. Until next time, bye.